Hello, welcome to SEDES English. This is Eric, and today I'll be teaching you how to use should, have, has, and ought to. So we have should, have, has, or ought to. Whenever we use should, that is whenever you want to talk about giving advice or receiving advice, but that's to do with advice. Ought to is something that you use when you want to talk about something you cannot avoid, or something that is the truth, but somebody may not want to hear, or something like that. But it's something you cannot avoid be following or doing that ought to be followed. Then we have has to. So this is something that you're required to do and you cannot get out of, no matter what. We'll use some examples right now. So we'll start with should. And again, that is advice. So if you want to give somebody advice, let's say you go to the doctor and they do this test on you and whatnot, and at the end they tell you some things like you should exercise. Right? That's something that a doctor could tell you if something's not right. Right? You should exercise. It's advice that you should follow, or you can follow, that will help you with what you're doing. Along with that, they may tell you you should eat less fast food. You should eat less fast food. So again, this is just advice on telling you something that is not required. It's not necessarily the truth, but something that is best for you, right? Next, we'll do ought to. So again, that's something you cannot avoid, and it's the truth, something that has to happen, right? So ought to, can't avoid. So something like that is I ought to drive I ought to drive the speed limit. So again, driving the speed limit, that's that's something that it's the truth that you should be doing. I ought to drive the speed limit. So that's something that if I don't do, something bad could happen if I don't follow the truth of driving the speed limit. Something else, another example, we ought to do our homework. So if you don't do your homework, you won't get good grades, may not pass. So that's something that you can't avoid doing if you want the good outcome of that. And finally, has to. So this is something that you are required to do, and there's no way that you can get out of doing this. So something that we all have to do is you have to pay your bills. That's something that there's no way you cannot do those things. You're required to do those things. If you have, let's say, work in the morning, he has to wake up early, right? That's something, if you have work in the morning and you have to be there, 7 a.m., he has to wake up early. There's no getting around it. It's just like paying your bills. You cannot not pay your bills and continue on. So again, one more time, should is for advice. You don't have to follow what they're telling you. You don't have to exercise. You don't have to eat less fast food. So it's up to you to follow that advice or not. Ought to is something that you can't avoid. And if you ignore, something bad could happen possibly, like this. I ought to drive the speed limit, and if you don't, you can get a ticket. We ought to do our homework, and if you don't, you can get bad grades or not pass. Again, last thing is required to, something you cannot get around. So you cannot not pay your bills, and you cannot not wake up early to get to work. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you learn, and hope to see you soon in class.